You know, it's amazing how much power a single picture has over a person. A picture has the ability to inspire as well as destroy. A picture can inspire people by moving them emotionally or having a call to action for them. I would say that probably the greatest fundraisers, the greatest sparks when it comes to assisting in a humanitarian crisis has always come from a single picture. One image that captures the whole story in one frame. It's actually kind of amazing. When we kind of look back at history, we get our understanding of how things were, what's the style of clothing at the time, how people lived. We get this through the Renaissance paintings. We get these through the old pottery paintings that we find in places such as ancient Greece, or the old little scribbles on the walls during the caveman period. So it's amazing that through all of human history, images, pictures have always held big sway over us, and they've inspired us. But then there's the opposite side of that. There's also the way that an image can destroy someone. Sometimes this destroys their will to live or their credibility. Sometimes a picture exposes someone for who they truly are. And recently, a single photo ended up doing just that. A recent photo of a well-known talk show host, a well-known lesbian, well-loved lesbian talk show host, just exposed her for who she truly is. You would think that it's not just the fact that she's a talk show host, but in this single image, and with a little bit of digging into her history, it turns out that she is in fact a puppet for the government and a puppet for the intelligence agency. And I'm going to show you right now how that's the case.
You have owners. They own you. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets, and they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. The table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want people who are smart enough to sit around the kitchen table and figure out how badly they're getting fucked by a system that threw them overboard 30 fucking years ago. You know what they want? They want obedient workers. Obedient workers. It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
So, this well-known talk show host that I'm speaking of is none other than Ellen DeGeneres. Ellen is a well-known comedian, stand-up comedian. She had her own sitcom back in the 90s called Ellen that was allegedly taken away from her after she came out of the closet. After she said that she was a lesbian, they took her show away from her. But since then, she's grown to have her own daily talk show where she has celebrity guests coming on. She's worth millions of dollars, and she's famous. You probably won't find a person these days who doesn't know who Ellen DeGeneres is. But with a single picture that was taken of her just a few days ago, you can find out who she really is. Now, the picture that I'm talking about is this one here that you can see I've outlined in the right. She was at a Cowboys game, and she was sitting next to former President George W. Bush, who apparently she is good friends with. She's been friends with George W. Bush for a long time, despite the fact that Ellen is a Hollywood liberal and George Bush was a former president, Republican president. They've maintained a good friendship over the years. Now, when this image was released to the public, it sparked a lot of backlash, and people ended up taking to Twitter, in which they were condemning her. And, most of the criticisms had to do with the fact that she was the fact that George W. Bush was a war criminal, for the fact that he invaded Iraq without cause, and the millions of Iraqis that have been killed under his watch. So many people, their biggest criticism of Ellen was the fact that she was shown next to George W. Bush, that she has maintained her friendship with George W. Bush, And she was trying to play it off on her show as more to do with the fact that, we need to be able to speak to people with different ideas, those who hold different political ideas than you do. And I just got a few segments from her show here that where she ends up speaking about this. And then we're going to jump into the nitty-gritty of it all. Oh, I should have reloaded this before I started. There we go.
So we get to sit in this very fancy suite because, he owns the whole place. So his suite is fancy, and he's got fancy friends. And I don't mean fancy like Real Housewife fancy. I mean like fancy. Look, I took a video of who was next to me.
So the picture, along with that video that she put up, is what she received criticism over. And she goes on to talk about it a little bit more during her show, which is right about there.
But during the game, they showed a shot of George and me laughing together, and so people were upset. They thought, why is a gay Hollywood liberal sitting next to a conservative Republican president? Didn't even notice I'm holding the brand new iPhone 11. And but a lot of people were mad, and they did what people do when they're mad. They tweet, and but here's one tweet that I loved. This person says, "Ellen and George Bush together makes me have faith in America again." And
so that's the clip from Ellen's talk show right there, where she is defending the fact that she's friends with George W. Bush. Now, I don't care whether Ellen is friends with George W. Bush or not. That's really none of my concern to me. What really concerns me is when you start looking into her history and you realize that she's been an asset to people such as the government, people such as the CIA in the past. Now, I can't really take credit for uncovering this. I have to give full credit to Tiffany Fitzhenry here on Twitter, where she is outlined in more than one threads all the information. She's put all the information together so that everyone can see how, dating back to like the 90s, Ellen DeGeneres has been a puppet for these people. And I only found out about this because I happened to be watching Nightwave Radio with Mike Shealy, and he was talking about this. So full credit goes to Tiffany Fitzhenry for putting together the tweet on this, and the other one goes to Mike Shealy of Nightwave Radio for bringing this to my attention. But this thread that Tiffany Fitzhenry ended up putting together says, Ellen DeGeneres and George W. Bush are the same thing. A leaked 2009 memo in an email exchange, then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton singled out the Ellen DeGeneres Show, which she could use to amplify and deliver messages that advance policy making. The below State Department memo states that Ellen DeGeneres is willing to use her platform to promote the agenda of the State Department. So this is what you have here. While Ellen does not spend many shows dealing with serious foreign policy issue, she does use her show to support important causes and raise money for them. Further, her show is syndicated internationally in 10 countries, including Canada, Australia, and India. She is a big supporter of Hillary Clinton and is willing to use her platform to help promote the agenda of the new Secretary of State. Now, it's I don't think it's any secret that Hollywood has been pushing out these sort of messages for a long time. That Hollywood has been, they do have their political biases, but they are a propaganda network, so I don't think that'll surprise anybody really just off the start. But she goes way more into, Tiffany Fitzhenry goes into a much more detail here. In another leaked official State Department exchange, a top government aide and the Secretary of State discuss Ellen DeGeneres' quote, willingness to do whatever we ask. So now we go to WikiLeaks. And so this one is between someone in, let's see here, where it's from H. Malto at Clinton email. So maybe this is Hillary Clinton herself, but at least someone inside of Clinton's office, aide to Clinton, that was sending this message, and it was sent to Cheryl D. Mills. Now, Cheryl D. Mills was a lawyer and a corporate executive, but she ended up serving as the deputy of the White House counsel to Bill Clinton when he was the president. She has also served as Hillary Clinton's chief of staff during her tenure as the U.S. Secretary of State, and has been one of those people that is sort of in the inner group of the Clintons, one of her core advisors, a good friend to Hillary and Bill Clinton. And if we look at the bottom, it says, in regards to if Ellen DeGeneres was in LA is the subject, it says, I spoke with her and she said she would do whatever we ask and is so... I spoke with her and she said she would do whatever we asked and so full speed ahead. That's coming that's coming from government officials right there. But there's more. So just to recap, Ellen DeGeneres is willing to covertly push official government foreign policy under the guise of a silly, non-threatening morning talk show. You with me so far? Interestingly, Sony is the company that distributes the Ellen DeGeneres show. And we can see here the Ellen show. And then we're seeing down here at the bottom, sorry about the red box, it says distributor, Sony Pictures Television, CBS Television Distribution. If you were getting your news from Jake Tapper in the fallout during the Sony hacks, you probably have no idea the incredible bombshell that were revealed. Notably, among them is the tightly link between Sony and, you guessed it, the government, specifically the CIA/State Department. And those two are pretty much, you can intertwine the two. So here we have it's from rastingle@gmail.com to Michael Litton at Sony. And this, we're going to switch over to another thread that Tiffany Fitzhenry ended up putting together. Just actually maybe a couple months before she ended up putting out this thread where she was talking about Hillary Clinton, Ellen DeGeneres as well. So this is Tiffany Fitzhenry here. She was giving an interview, I guess, the McFiles or MC Files. I'm actually not sure. Christopher McDonald is the host. I've never seen this show before. But during this interview, this is what she said.
We have to wake up from our whole notion of what we thought that this world was, because it's nothing of what we thought it was. People, associated with this are people like Ellen DeGeneres. People thought Ellen DeGeneres was, or a lot of people still think she is this like funny, just talk show host. That's not all what she is. She is a deep state asset.
Yes, she is.
CIA operative. We have to.
And this actually, before I move on to the thread, because what ended up happening is she ended up, I think it was Jake Tapper, ended up commenting on this about what she said here. So before we move on to the thread she ended up putting out about Ellen DeGeneres, the second thread, the one that came back in August, what I wanted to bring up here was something that I felt for some time, and is that when it comes to comedy, I'm a big fan of stand-up comedy, and I like the idea of having stand-up comedy being a free platform where you can say whatever you can in order to make people laugh, because that's the point of stand-up comedy. But at the same time, I get this feeling that underneath this disguise of trying to make people laugh, you push out a political message in order to indoctrinate people. Because it's no doubt, you can't deny it, that most of the comedians out there are on the more left wing of politics, the globalist side of politics, very much like the Hollywood actors that are out there. Now, actors, they put out their movies, it's propaganda, well-known propaganda, we know this, and then they push their stuff in their personal life. But what if a comedian could use their comedy to change the way you think about a subject in order to push them down, to indoctrinate you even better than an actor could? Because we do know that what's on screen in a movie is fake. And you can't take these actors seriously because they're actors, this is exactly their job. A comedian is supposed to make you laugh, but while they're making you laugh, they're actually planting a seed in your brain that'll grow, and then this starts to form your political ideas. This is just something I've been wondering for some time. I've been hearing sort of a little bit here and there about how in the past there have been stand-up comedians that have been, basically they've been propagandists and they've been puppets. They've been puppets for intelligence assets in the past. I know that Joe Rogan gets a lot of this criticism before. Anyway, So this is the other thread that she put out on August 6th, and it was because of that interview that I just showed here, and someone like Jake Tapper was commenting on it, criticizing her for it. And the reason we switch over here is because she goes back talking about this whole idea with Sony. I think she actually did sort of cut and paste a little bit from this thread over to this new thread over here. But anyway. But the reason we're over here is because she goes into a little more detail about what's going on with Sony and the government. So, to recap, it says, if you were just getting your news from Jake Tapper and the fallout during the Sony hacks, you would have no idea the incredible bombshell that were revealed. Notably among them is the tight link between Sony and, you guessed it, the government, specifically the CIA/State Department. Quote, the Sony archives show behind the scenes Sony is influential corporation with ties to the White House. There is almost 100 U.S. government email addresses in the archive, an ability to impact laws, policies, and connections to the U.S. military-industrial complex, end quote, coming from Julian Assange. Maybe this is part of the reason he ended up getting arrested. She goes on to say, I strongly urge everyone to read Julian Assange's press release regarding the Sony hacks. Click on all the linked emails in the press release, and then go to search the archives yourself. Below, I'll show a couple that apply there. Here we have the Undersecretary of the State Department, cough cough, CIA proxy, asking the CEO of Sony, who we can see in the entertainment world while he's in New York, regarding anti-Russian messaging and also anti-ISIL messaging for your content. Here, the State Department and Sony CEO discuss which Hollywood writers and actors the government could tap to covertly push their agenda. Among the names are George Clooney, Kerry Washington, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Aaron Sorkin, Shonda Rhimes, Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, and others. And this is what she's making reference to. And we can see down here in the second red circle, this is where they're showing the names of the people who could be used in order to push this messaging. And then there's also some other ones down there, such as we got in the third bubble, it's Julia Louis-Dreyfus. So we can see how Sony has been involved with this, and Sony is the one that's pushing the Ellen DeGeneres show. So that's where Sony ties into this, and but then we go on here. So she moves on. She says, in a quick search of Freedom of Information documents regarding the Pentagon, Department of Defense, CIA involvement with Hollywood, the Ellen DeGeneres show comes up with a remarkable frequency. There's just one of tons of examples. So we see here, Ellen Mother's Day show. Ellen's. So you can see here, I don't think anything I really need to read for you. But there's more. Remember that time British intelligence agencies, in association with the Pentagon and CIA, inserted Ellen's cupcake recipes into a jihad magazine? An intelligence publisher, CIA friend, Stratfor, was tracking the whole thing. I actually remember reading about that, too. That was always very odd to me. I'm like, why would they put an Ellen DeGeneres cupcake recipe into a jihad magazine? Then there's this. Remember how the only witness to have interacted with the alleged shooter, CIA-linked Stephen Paddock, just did one interview on Ellen? Come to think of it, that was kind of weird, wasn't it? And what we're talking about here is what ended up happening in Las Vegas. The security guard, who allegedly was the first one to engage with Stephen Paddock, ended up getting shot. Then there was a 6-minute difference from the time that Stephen Paddock shot that security guard to when he fired down on the crowd. Although I gotta admit, to me one of the weirdest parts was the fact that it took the police an hour from the time that the shooting started to before they entered this guy's hotel room. I mean, I get that it's not an easy situation, but this is exactly what police and SWAT teams are trained to do, yet it took them a ridiculous amount of time in order to get into Stephen Paddock's room. So the Mandalay Bay Hotel security guard who was reportedly the first victim of the Las Vegas shooting, has given his first and only interview. So here's the raw video here of when the police show up in the Mandalay Bay Hotel and they speak to this security guard, Jose Campos.
Now we'll stand by and wait for more railroad to us. What did she give you? I don't know. I don't know if it's a pellet or a 22 or We had access to this room.
The room's at the end of the hallway, and apparently, from what he was saying, they put a bracket up on the...
Now, there is one thing I wanted to bring up, because they just talk a little bit, then they start heading down the hallway toward the room. I can't really say for sure that how badly Jesus Campos was injured, but for someone who got shot, his leg is remarkably unbloodied. You know? Even if they shot through the door, even if the bullet didn't have full penetration, there would still be enough pressure on there to actually hit him and injure him. I doubt he would be on his feet, and there would be a lot more blood dripping down his leg than what we're seeing here. I mean, even if he cleaned up before these officers ended up coming by and getting a shot of this, I don't see any injury there. I don't see any blood, and it looks from this angle that he's showing them where he was hit, and I'm not seeing it. Now, I wasn't sure about the actual two-shooter theory when this ended up coming out, but I always thought everything that was going on with what happened in Las Vegas was quite weird. But then probably the weirdest thing out of all of this was this security guard, Jose Campos. He ended up getting shot. He gave his interview on Ellen, and then he just kind of disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to him, really. He hasn't really been seen since his interview with Ellen. He was supposed to go on this media blitz, going to different shows where he was he had something like 5 different shows after Ellen that he had lined up where he was going to talk about what happened. One of them being Sean Hannity's show. And then I think just a few hours before he appeared on Hannity, he contacted them, or at least his whoever was handling his public relations contacted Hannity and canceled on him and canceled on all these shows. And he really has not been seen anywhere since. I mean, even you look at somewhere like Snopes, which I don't fucking trust Snopes at all, but in here they talk about is Mandalay Bay security guard Jesus Campos missing? And they say, no, this is false. But if you read through the article they put, they're still saying he hasn't been seen since that Ellen interview, and they don't say where he's been. They just say, oh, police say he's not missing, and that's their whole thing to say that this is fake. But where is Jesus Campos after everything ended up happening? This was a guy that was saying that he was ready to come forward and tell his story, and he wanted to make sure that everyone knew about what happened, and then suddenly after Ellen, just gone. Not to be heard again. So who knows what ended up happening to Jesus Campos. But Ellen was the only show that he ended up giving an interview to. But there's more. Remember, Ellen came out in the late 90s, mid to late 90s, came out of the closet and admitted she was a lesbian. And this is where things get interesting. Apparently lost her show over it. Continuing with Tiffany Fitzhenry's thread. Did you know that when Ellen came out on April 30th, 1997, an international computer bulletin board system in the CIA lit up? Who knew the nation's spies were paying such close attention to a sitcom star? So we have here, hold on, I can delete these now. I have nothing else saved. I don't need that red box anymore. This is from the Hollywood Reporter. Although it goes unmentioned in the film, Van Corey explained to the Hollywood Reporter that when Ellen DeGeneres came out on April 30th, 1997, an international computer bulletin board system at the CIA lit up with volumes of anonymous homophobic comments in response to DeGeneres' TV and Time magazine announcement. So, what reason were they to spend so much time monitoring Ellen DeGeneres? And now this whole thing about the bulletin board system was homophobic comments related to her TV show and to her. But why are they monitoring this? We go on more. So for anyone surprised, mad, happy, or confused at seeing Ellen and Bush palling around at a football game, just rip the band-aid off already. They're part of the illusion that stole our freedom and sanity and sovereignty, but the moment we see it, the illusion shatters forever. And this is a tweet by Ellen DeGeneres, who was the very first person to welcome the CIA on Twitter back in 2014. The CIA's first tweet they put out was, "We can neither confirm nor deny that this is our Twitter account," trying to make light of what they do. And this is Ellen's response. "If it's one thing I love about the CIA, it's their sense of humor. # CIA is on Twitter." So, what reason does Ellen DeGeneres have to be so connected back to all these members of the CIA, connected back to the State Department, connected back to being monitored all the way by the CIA, connected to Jesus Campos? It's just... Well, for a long time, the media has been used by these intelligence agencies. Let's not forget about Project Mockingbird. And for those who didn't see my video on Project Mockingbird or never looked it up, Project Mockingbird was something that was started by the CIA back in the 1950s in order to hire different journalists and newspapers, not news sites at the time, newspapers and news agencies. They brought these people on in order to push the propaganda that they wanted, push the stories that they wanted, hide the stories that they didn't want, involving well-known journalists. Probably the most famous one is C.D. Jackson. C.D. Jackson, who was big at Time magazine. I'm trying to remember his exact position there, but he was like chief editor or something, or even higher up than that at Time magazine. And funny enough, he's the person who has the original Zapruder film that showed JFK getting assassinated, and it's locked up in Time magazine's vault. They won't show the whole thing. They only get the little bits that they show you on YouTube and on the internet. So this picture of Ellen DeGeneres opened up a can of worms that I don't think she was expecting. But she's connected back to the president. She's connected back to the State Department. She's connected back to different intelligence agencies. They've been watching her. It's just, you can only have so many coincidences before it gets suspicious. And with Ellen DeGeneres, it's definitely suspicious. So, you can take this as it is. Of course, it's no smoking gun. This is not a definite that Ellen DeGeneres is a CIA asset. But if you ask me, if we're weighing the amount of evidence for and against, I would say it's very likely that she is an intelligence agency asset, a government asset that was out there pushing for Hillary Clinton, pushing for the CIA, well-known friend with George W. Bush. I mean, it's all a show. Politics is all a fucking show. I mean, for me, one thing is that I've known people that have worked for not any high-ranking politicians, but like city councilors here. I've mentioned I live in Ottawa. I've known some people that have worked for city councilors before. And the one thing that I've heard is how, despite the fact, we've got this person's a liberal city councilor and this person's a conservative city councilor and stuff. Despite all this, these city councilors, before a vote, they even walked in to vote on a specific bill or whatever, they had already made up their minds. They had already been talking to each other. They had already known, we're going to vote this way on this issue, so they'll let whoever, if someone's coming in, a member of the public, in order to talk to the city councilors, try and push them to vote a certain way on whatever that happens to be, let's just say public transportation as an example. They'll let them do their spiel. But the city councilors have already made up their mind. They've already made up their mind. They know who they're going to be voting for, which direction they're going to be voting for. They know the outcome of these votes before before they walk in that room. And it's not much different when it comes to federal politics all over the world. It's a WWE match, as former governor of Minnesota Jesse Ventura described it. He said that he was amazed that during his time in office as a independent governor, how much it reminded him. This is also, Jesse Ventura was also a former wrestler in the WWE, and he said he was amazed at how much of politics remind him of the WWE. You get in front of the cameras, you yell at each other, you hate each other, but behind closed doors, you're going out to lunch together, you're getting the families together. You just don't let everyone else know about it. So it's all a fucking show. It's all a WWE match. And the propaganda is everywhere. And the political operatives and the intelligence assets are everywhere, including Ellen DeGeneres, in my opinion. That's all I really had for you all today. So make up your own minds with the information that I've brought to you here. I would say go subscribe on YouTube to Nightwave Radio. Go follow on Twitter Tiffany Fitzhenry. I mean, she seems to be good at her job. She's usually, one of her things that she does is she is trying to expose Hollywood. So no problems here from me. But do with this what you will, and I'll be back. I'll be back soon for another video here on Just My Stupid Opinion. Take care of yourselves.